I'm a member of this LASOC committee, Libya Asbestos Superfund Oversight Committee, and I'm the citizen representative, and I'm speaking today as that citizen and not as some official representative of that committee. These first four bullets are some things that are coming up, and these are direct bullets and topics from an upcoming agenda that EPA has shared with us that they will be in town for a public meeting to discuss in the next few weeks. Partial deletions from the NPL, the National Priority List for operational units 4 and 7, which are Libya and Troy. That's a goal that they've had for a long time. We've been opposed to it equally as long, and will continue to be, because we feel that if it gets deleted from the NPL, even though they claim that obviously they can come back, they're certainly one step closer to the exit. Which kind of leads into the public health emergency, which is a critical thing that nobody quite understands what happens if it's gone, but we all pretty well know it can't be good. Although I think just when you think about logic, it would be nice for it to be gone someday and to know that there's no longer any public health emergency or concern. But that cannot apparently disappear. I was told just 2 days ago, until all of the remediation, all the cleanups for all the OUs, and the last one is the mother lode itself at the mine site, which is OU3, and that has yet to even see a feasibility study, which is the Grace's plan that they developed with their consultant about how it's going to be cleaned up. And we have yet to see that release. We have not been part of that process like we have been on some other things in the past. We've been excluded from it, as has for the most part DEQ. So we're all going to be faced here sometime soon with a massive document, a lot of very technical things in it, and I assume a new risk assessment. And you all probably, many of you here know what that looked like before, and a lot to really review and react to. But the other thing that I want to spend just a couple of minutes on is the 5-year review, which is part of the CERCLA Superfund process. You can read this, but this is right every 5 years on an NPL site. The operating units that have been remediated, that is cleaned up, are required under the National Contingency Plan to undergo an administrative review to determine whether or not the systems that have been put in place for that operating unit are still protective of human health and the environment. And I underline that, and so you have to look at the remedy. And the remedy, of course, if you look at the second bullet, at that time that the remedy was adopted about how clean is clean, how much do we clean up each individual site here, each property owner's site, how clean is that? That was based on 2 major documents, and these were big studies. The 2014 toxicological review for LA, and prior to that time, there wasn't any compilation of that, as far as I can tell. So that was a big task, and then that followed 2015 with the site-wide human health risk assessment. Based on those things, that's how they established the remedy. That's how it was cleaned up. Now, the 5-year review, that process is still in progress. And it's also in progress for the groundwater site here this year, too. It's like Christmas every 5 years here. So very briefly, the questions that are prescribed in the 5-year review, there are 3 questions, A, B, and C, and these come right out of EPA's guidance document. And the first question is the remedy functioning the way it's supposed to in these decision documents? And generally the answer to that is yes. Now a lot of you have met the people from the Asbestos Resource Program and Mandy, and they, along with, work hand in glove with Melody especially to provide the resources that this community needs to maintain that remedy and support everybody in operation and maintenance. And I can tell you that they're very busy. They on a regular basis see things that are either missed or need additional attention as property owners use their property and make changes. And the mechanisms are in place through that program for those things to be addressed. So I'm very thankful that's going well, thanks to those two groups of people. The funding for that, by the way, gets reimbursed from EPA's funds. Next question deals with are the exposure assumptions and toxicity data and things like that, are they still valid? And that's a little bit of a tricky question because they talk in the guidance about promulgated standards, and there really aren't any that are particularly governing about LA. So the big question is question C, and you can read this here. Has any other information come to light that could call into question the protectiveness of the remedy? So let's think about just, and this is what I thought about when I read this and knew this was coming up. You think back, okay, 10, 12 years ago, you had these studies, that's what they based the cleanup on. We're 10 or 12 years down the road, and have we learned anything more in the scientific community? Do we know anything further? Is there anything that's important that could affect the protectiveness of this remedy? In other words, other health effects, other concentration levels at which those occur. Maybe we're doing too much. I don't think so. But this question needs to be asked, and in fact, this is a mandatory question in the regulatory process. So it's not just something we've dreamed up. Now, they give an example of, one of the example questions could even relate to ecological resources, and I'm not going to spend much time on that, except we do have some things that have come up there. But as you can see, these are all dynamic systems, you know. You folks learn more, we know more, and it's incumbent in this process, and I think just morally, to say later, what do we know, and are we still doing the right thing? So that's the question. Now, members of this group, and thank you, Gene, and the rest of you, I spoke with this group back in last fall, and I asked them this question, and one of the documents that Gene so nicely summarized, and that was the only comment that I actually saw right out of this group, although I understand there are some others, as part of her write-up and excellent summary was it's not possible at this time to determine whether or not the remedy today is protective. Now that in my thinking is not saying, oh my gosh, the sky's falling, you know, our hair's on fire, we've got another panic here, that it's not the mess that Chris walked into. But what it says is, you know, we really don't know at this time, can't say with certainty, and so we need to revisit this. Now, one of the things I don't have a slide on, but I'll tell you, because it's not in here, but I want to just tell you some of the choices that the regulatory community, meaning EPA, has if the answer to this question is what Gene has here, has said, and answers, yes, there is other information, okay? So if they get that answer, they have a series of choices about how they then make a conclusion in the 5-year review about is this protective or not. They can decide that despite that, it's protective. They can say it's unprotective, they can say different things, but there's one outcome or one statement that they can make that I think fits this perfectly, and it's the one that I intend to support, and I think probably DEQ will, and I hope that the community will make their feelings known about this too through different bodies like the health board and so forth. And that outcome is to say that protectiveness cannot be determined until further information is obtained. That requires them, if they make that statement, to set a schedule to do it, which does not affect the time schedule for the next 5-year review. Because, you know, it'd be nice to just say, yeah, we'll do that 20 years from now, and in the meantime, you put subsequent 5-year reviews in abeyance. But that probably wouldn't happen in our regulatory community, right? So There's other things, obstacles, of course, to this. I mean, we all know about funding, and there'll be, I'm sure, concerns about funding and not having it. My comments so far to the EPA regulatory community, and Melody's heard this from me a dozen times, is fine. I mean, if EPA doesn't have the funding for that right now, that doesn't mean that your conclusion should skirt the issue and say, no, it's protective because we don't have the money to look at it. So I think you've got to do what's right and then let this community and the political process and so forth help bring that to some good conclusion. So these are important milestones that are in the offing. I know everybody's sick and tired of hearing about asbestos in this community. We want it to be over. Everybody does, but we also want to be safe, and we want to know we're protected, and we want it to be done right and to completion. I personally think that it's going to be decades and decades before, if they're consistent with this process, before this thing finally planes out. And you folks probably know better, but this process has to follow what you're doing, and that's where we need the help. Our committee, I think, is an important vehicle to work, certainly work with DEQ, and we work very well with them. But anyway, the other thing I'd say is we got some things coming up with OU3, that's the mine site, when that study comes out, where we're going to need people to participate in that. But remember, with OU3, the big mother lode up there, and they're going to propose what's done there, all these questions get resurrected again about how clean is clean, and I don't know. They may decide they want to use the 2014-15 stuff as their basis for a decision, and that doesn't seem logical to an engineer, not a doctor. Anyway, we've got a couple things coming up. EPA has a public meeting here in Libby, July 15th at 6 o'clock, where these topics will come up. And those of you from this local community, please speak up. And then our committee, the LASOC committee, meets a week from today at 10 o'clock.
In your opinion, sir, what is the status or the level of safety here in Libby and Troy and up in the site? What's your risk assessment?
Well, I don't know about up at the site because I've never been there. Mandy's been there, and I won't put her on the spot about that. Right now, you wouldn't want to be up at the site because it's not a place you didn't have it. Let me just answer your question this way. Well, my wife and I both have a very strong environmental consulting background, and when we decided we thought we might want to leave central Illinois and move to the Rockies, we liked what we thought we saw here in Libby and so forth. I read almost all these reports. I read the investigative reports, I read the feasibility studies, and in 2009, we bought property here. 2009, we built under the Montana plan our shop. We built our home and we live here. I wouldn't have moved here if I didn't think that what was being done was appropriate at this time. I do question exactly what I've put forward here. I'm concerned about it, not panicked, but I think, I mean, when I hear these things about autoimmune and the fact that these may be triggered at lower exposure levels and things we don't know, then I think it's up to us to push to get those things addressed. But I think for the most part, we're based on what we knew before. I think it's protective based on the knowledge we had in front of us. I don't know if that's still true. And that's the question. So I didn't answer your question.
So what level that risk assessment is at Libby right now? Is it high, middle, or low? The risk.
I think right now, based on the information that was available and the toxicological reviews and the values that they set up, then it is protective. But I think if you take into account some of the things that these folks have heard or told you about other things that need to be considered and things that the scientific community has brought forward in the last 10 or 15 years, that may change. And that's what the point of this is let's take a look and not just have to decide is it protective or not based on not taking another look.